It feels pretty appropriate that I'm going to record this one from bed. I've never really recorded from my bedroom before, but this is about when you have changing capacity, like due to chronic illness, due to being neurodivergent, due to being disabled. It really does often feel like you're going like one step forward, two steps back. Every time you're like building momentum in your creative business, a flare may hit, maybe obligations from family members might arise, and it's hard to pick it back up again when you have that stop. So I really wanted to talk about some of the things, that have helped me, a little bit about my own journey, because I don't think I've talked about it before on YouTube yet. I have done it in other platforms as well, but for me, I've always been neurodivergent, and I know that's always impacted the advice that I've been given from other like business owners and marketers and productivity people. We get a lot of that kind of like the very typical productivity advice, and it just does not work for everyone. It definitely, if you're neurodivergent, it doesn't work, but also, not everybody is working from the same like workable hours. Not everyone can work 40 hours in a week. Not everybody has the same energy levels from one week to the next. And it really makes getting advice from other places really challenging. So I know that other people have also talked about this, but I just kind of, because disability and chronic illness is so personalized, I figured it can only help just to offer my own voice, especially as we're in Disability Pride Month. It took me a long time to understand and validate my experience of being disabled. It really was not until I was very much forced to do so that I came to that realization, which is, from what I understand, not uncommon for folks. To just kind of talk about that story a little bit, I have had off and on, I've had a sleep disorder probably since I was 20. I didn't get it diagnosed until I was much older, due to medical bias against femme bodies. But that was fatigue, but that was once I had left corporate employment where I was sitting at a desk all the time. For the most part, my hypersomnia, my sleep disorder, which is similar to narcolepsy, that kind of was manageable. So I didn't really see that as like something that was necessarily disabling. I've had pain due to PCOS, but again, not often enough that it was felt disabling. I didn't really start to feel in any way hampered by some of my chronic illnesses until I had my son. This is in 2020. After an epidural, I had a lot of back spasms that could sometimes lay me out for an entire day. And that eventually, after 2 full years, that went away. That was my first brush of I'm not in control of my body as much as I would like to hope. And able-bodied people take that for granted. They take this idea of I will be healthy unless I do something to my body. There's this element of you don't have as much control as you think you do. And like I said, I would get a back spasm, or I would get back pain from that epidural, and I would be in bed just in agony, and there was very little that could help with it. And it would last for like a day or two, and like I said, that was that first realization. But again, that eventually dissipated. But then I got COVID, and after having COVID, I actually got COVID in between my first and second vaccination shots, which really sucks. My luck is not amazing, apparently. And then after that, my first inkling that I had long COVID was even after I was had recovered for the most part, my resting heart rate would hang out in the 140s. And that was lasted for several days. Which, if you can imagine, having your heart rate in the 140s, just for days on end, is not good for your body. And then it was the 130s for several days. And then it was in the 120s. And then, of course, once I got in to see my doctor and they did an EKG, it was okay. It's like I said, I have shit luck when it comes to that. So that was my first idea of like, oh, that maybe was just a freak thing. Maybe that was just a reaction to both having the vaccine in my body and the COVID at the same time, you know, what have you. So I didn't think too much of it. But much later, I started developing blood pressure issues, and I saw my PCP, and thankfully they were able to, at this time, were able to recreate it at the PCP office, and I got sent over to cardiology, and I was diagnosed with POTS, which stands for postular orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I had never really connected it to COVID, but the cardiologist office flat out said, they're like, we're seeing so many more people due to, like, since COVID with POTS. And so it affects your autonomic nervous system. Basically, most people can get up and stand up and bend over and pick things up and they're fine, but because of it's all the wires are crossed. So like my heart rate and my blood pressure spike when it shouldn't, and exertion is sometimes an issue. And was one time I almost fell unconscious in my house alone, which was really scary, but I was able to kind of get myself out of it. There's usually, you have some sort of signal into your body of like, danger. You need to, whatever you're doing, whatever activity you're doing, you need to stop. Like, there is that clear signal with POTS, well, at least for me, which I'm grateful for. But I didn't really realize this was something that was fully disabling until a little more than a year ago. I was on my way to my son's school. This was for an IEP meeting we'd been waiting basically 2 years for. And I thought, because I had been having a little bit of transportation issues, I thought I would bike ride it. It was like 1.5 miles away, so my thought process is, well, I know I can walk that, so I can probably bike it just fine. And it was not fine. I was getting close. I was like probably 2/3 of the way, and I started feeling that feeling. But I'm like, oh, I'm so close. Let me at least just hop off the bike and walk the bike. Like, maybe it's the bike riding that is too much. So I get off the bike and I'm walking it, and I'm just getting full on like tunnel vision, and I can see the school. That's what was frustrating. Like, I'm like a block away from the school, and I just fall completely unconscious. Like, I'm like not even able to crawl. Like, I'm just on the side, just completely just not able to move, not able to open my eyes, not able to speak and ask for and cry for help, nothing. It is a very bizarre and very just awful feeling to have that loss of control. And there was 2 thoughts that came into my head. The first thought was, because again, I don't know if anyone who's ever been unconscious before, at least for me, I cannot speak, I cannot do any of the things, but I still am able to think, and I can still hear everything around me. So I have like some level of awareness. I just can't interact with the world. I'm like out. And it was, so the first thought was, oh no, someone's gonna think I passed out drunk in their front lawn and they're gonna call the cops. Which, unfortunately, is a real fear for disabled people, because police do sometimes interact with us in violent ways and things. So that was definitely a worry. And then I thought, I'm like, well, that's probably unlikely. But then my second thought was, wow, I had been doing a lot of speaking events at that time. I had been like doing like 2 or 3 a week. I had been going to all the events and just doing all the things and just push. And I'm like, Max, you cannot do this anymore. You cannot keep pushing. Like, my body was literally, like, very, very literally, like, put a forced stop on all of those things. And, like, I could not have written it better, because I literally was like, oh, I can see, because in our minds, and this is, this has been my experience, if I just keep pushing a little bit further, I will get to the destination. And that's kind of that mindset of just a little bit more. And then our culture encourages that. It encourages that hustle mindset, and that you just keep needing to push, and then it won't be as hard anymore. And like, we just disabled people just cannot do that. Our bodies will not let us do that. We are like potentially taking years off of our life by trying to continue to push. And that was a really stark just realization for me of like, whatever I'm doing, I need to stop. And I did take that to heart. I wound down a lot of the things that I was doing. I stopped taking on nearly like as many clients, and I had the projects that I already signed up for, so I wound those down. So around that fall, I'm like, okay, well, I can't keep going that way, but now what? And I really had that forced stillness was a way to kind of get that clarity of like, how can I shape a business model around sustainability? And some of those things, like speaking, like I could still do some of that virtually. I started trying to look at it from that point of view of like, what are things that I enjoy doing that maybe just need to be adapted to where I currently am at, energetically and health wise, or like even with the season of my life, because I have a young kid at home. And so I thought about it from that perspective. Thought about it like, what services should I stop offering? What services should I start offering? Are there ways that I can make what was very much personalized and customized marketing offers into something much more streamlined that will take less pressure on me to adapt and put more hours into each individual project, as versus doing all of the time, like the upfront time of recording videos about teaching about these things, or making templates that I can continue to use. I have created a framework and like actually made templates of each aspect of that framework that I was taking clients through. So it was that aspect of it of like, what can I do and respect that and give myself some breathing room. And so I gave myself that breathing room, in that like for like almost, I would say about 8 months. Like it was around January of this year where I really started trying to build that back up again. So I think from the big picture of it, do not take on things that require either, just like a lot of being on like every week. Like, for example, I don't do social media management anymore, because you have to be on and you have to be creating every week. And I cannot guarantee that for myself. I just do not have the health to assure that for people. Like, do I do long form content? Do I repurpose people's existing content? Yes, because at least for me, I'm neurodivergent. I have hyper focus periods where I can get a lot done for both myself and for clients. So in those time frames, let me go ahead and get your stuff all together and running, and to make sure that on the times that I'm maybe dealing with a flare up, you're still having your stuff go out. What is the way to do that makes sense for both myself and for clients? So looking at it from like the big picture, the offer standpoint and the business model standpoint, moving more towards facilitating community events versus doing everything one-on-one. Again, there's different ways you can look at tapping into your expertise, into your creativity in a way where it's not just being a straight up service provider all of the time. Like, I think that was another piece of it, is like, not all of my income can come from doing specific projects for one client at a time. I need to figure out other ways to do that. I need to figure out maybe building up a community, maybe building up my YouTube channel, like, again, selling those templates and some digital products, just like, that's a long-term plan, because that's not always going to pay off right away, especially if you don't have a large audience right away, because those numbers have to work out. But you can start to at least put some of that stuff into place, or think of the things that you've already created that you can continue to like increase that shelf life from like an offer standpoint. So like from that point of view, that really helped me at least see the direction I'm going in. Another piece of that is setting reasonable goals for yourself. I find that, because like I said, I have hyper focus, like there's like a bell curve, right? There's the hyper focus tail end of it, where I'm like, I am firing on all cylinders. I am marking everything off of the to-do list. I've like ran through that whole to-do list. Like, I'm feeling really good. And then like there's like probably the middle ground of like the middle of that bell curve, where I'm probably like, I'm getting stuff done. Like I'm prioritizing and I'm getting done the must do things on the to-do list, but maybe some of the things towards the bottom didn't get to. And that's, like I said, that's normal. That's expected. And then there are like that other end of the bell curve where I'm gonna flare up, and I'm lucky if I get like a thing done that day because I'm just in pain. Or maybe that flare up means that I am working from my bed or from the couch. Maybe being at a desk is too much for me. You know, maybe I had to cancel a in-person networking event, or something like that. So we are often setting goals and planning for the hyper focus or the top end of that bell curve, because it feels good when we're in that mode, but that mode is not sustainable. Not even, I think, for neurotypical or able-bodied people. Like, you at your best is not how you should be planning. You should be planning, in my mind, for like the 70-80% of the time where you're in the middle. So for me, it's I only set every quarter, you know, we're looking at the second half of the year now, I only set 3 goals for myself. And one of them is usually a personal goal because I want to have a good balance and make sure that I'm making recharging and self-care a priority, because it is investing in myself. It is investing in my overall well-being and health. And that is what's going to that's what's actually going to help and support and fortify me to be able to take on those other goals and able to achieve them. So I see that as just as important, like at the same level of priority, but I only keep, like I said, 2 business, 1 personal, and that's it. And then I've started implementing a good, better, best. So like, I'm not off. Again, another way we will set goals that will kind of make us feel shamey and guilty is like only having the best. Like, it'd be great if I wrote 50,000 words this month, for example, if you're a writer. And you know, so if you get to 30,000, you kind of feel shitty. You're like, oh, I didn't hit my goal. So for me, like the top end, you know, like if everything goes great, that's the best. The better, again, is in that middle ground of like, hey, this is if I'm being consistent and I'm doing it. It still gives me some grace and some days off. So I'm like, I don't feel like I, you know, am having to like be a, you know, grind or hustle to get to that better one. And then the good, and good is that's the one I will still feel accomplished. I still made progress. So kind of seeing it as a spectrum instead of a hard cutoff point. So when I set goals, I also look at it from that perspective. I also look at when I am doing my goal setting and my quarterly like planning, I also look at least 1 project a month that is helping build the sustainability of my business a little bit further. You know, we talked about that earlier in the video of like, how can I write out all my onboarding emails, or how can I design like the welcome guide for my client, or like how can I create something, like how can I create like pitch templates for the podcasts I want to would like to be on or be interviewed on. You know, what are things that are repeatable systems that I can start to have as a part of my overall structure, so I'm not starting from scratch. Because I think that has been, and I've been in business for over 3 years now, at least this iteration of it. I started initially in 2018 in marketing, but this iteration of Max Wild Stories started in early 2022, so it's like 3.5 years. And I will tell you, the first 2.5 to 3 years, I was starting from scratch every single time. So it's no wonder that, you know, I was getting burned out and I was exhausted, and I pushed myself past, you know, the point of burnout. So it was like, how do I not only keep momentum going, but, you know, like how do I create something that's I can continue to use over and over again, so I'm not starting from scratch. So I do free myself up to have more energy. So, and then I also let go of the need, and I know that I'm in marketing and I do content marketing strategy, and I talk through long form and all of these things. I let go of that whole time that I was like taking a pause for my business. I like very rarely, if ever, posted on Instagram or LinkedIn. Like, I took a big long break, and I'm only just now coming back to that in July. More about that experiment in a later video. But I let go of that need. You know, I was like, what is the barest minimum way I can get new clients and make sales? And it comes to the relationship building. So the one thing I did not necessarily slow down with, or I think I slowed down at first, but the thing that I picked back up first was the relationship building and the conversations that I was having with other business owners, just understanding their needs, again, you know, I was revamping my offers and my business model anyways. So it was really just nice to, you know, obviously not all of these calls were sales calls. In fact, most of them were not, but there was this element of like, what are people dealing with right now? Like, how can I create offers that not only serve my well-being and my health, but are also going to deliver things that people are struggling with actively. So it was a really great just ongoing feedback. And again, it was lots of people in my, you know, in that marketing space that are doing different things for me. So building that referral database and like being able to refer back and forth to people was helpful. And that was kind of like, that can keep running even when I'm not feeling amazing. I usually have it in me to be on like a Zoom call for 30 minutes, you know, and I'm, as an extrovert, I often get energy from that. Now, again, a lot of this has become more virtual because traveling and the heat here in Kansas City have made it hard for me to do a lot of like in-person stuff now. So I had to adapt and still consider that a win. So that was that piece of it, was like just finding ways that are more simplified, because, and that have a quicker return. Like, relationships and face-to-face is going to be better than just content going out all of the time anyways, because that content is fine, but they don't really get to fully know you in the same way of like being on an actual conversation with you. So like understanding that that was the first piece of it. And then from that, like from here, like all of the stuff that I had been slowly building out over the year, I've now, you know, organized it all into a place where I can start to like either repurpose it, or like I said, use those templates for other things. Like a lot of times I basically made the template and then I recorded the video about it for the courses that I created that illustrate the framework that I go through. And that courses, well, great, it would be great if they made me money. I'm not expecting them to right away. What I'm doing that plan is to more take private clients through like the process. So, you know, while I'm doing their copy, they can kind of see how they can implement it on their own, or they can start to build out their own marketing and sales processes based on their story, based on their brand story, and like have other ways to increase the value of working together, and also make sure that they're like integrating it into their business. So it's kind of like it's not just its own offer, it's actually a supplement to the work I'm already doing. And again, taking that pressure off of having to teach that over and over again. I have stuff that I can continue to refer back to. So that was also important. And I think that the final thing is just kind of, you know, we talked about the bell curve of your energy levels, of, you know, just understanding that we all have seasons. You know, the nature of this, especially if you're a parent, you know, if you're a parent of a young child, you do not have the same working hours as somebody with no kids at all, or somebody who has kids who are 12 years old, you know, and that goes along with being chronically ill or disabled. Not that we are children, don't infantilize people who are chronically ill. We just have to accept we don't always have the same working hours, you know, or what works for everybody else may not work for us. So I will talk about this more in the live stream that I'm going to do on Friday, which should already be posted. You have to find that structure and that rhythm that has, like I said, for me, at least for my neurodivergent brain, I need that structure. I need to have something to fall back on. I don't need the brain power to decide what I'm going to work on that day. Like, that would take me half of the day just figuring out what to work on, and then half the day is wasted, and then I can't get the thing done that I was supposed to get done. that was the hardest part for me. So I started using Sunsama, but I also realized that there's other ways I can do that. So I use a mix of like paper, analog, and a mix of digital. And for me, the biggest piece of it, like I said, we'll definitely go into this more in the live stream. Come with your questions if you have specific like implementation questions, planning questions, project management, like marketing, you know, any of those specific things you have, definitely show up for that live stream on Friday. But I will say this, I need an amount of flexibility. Like when you write something on paper, like I'm going to do XYZ on this day in your planner, and then you end up having to go to an appointment or something, or you know, like for whatever reason you can't get to it, that felt like a personal failure for me. If I kept having to write the same task down on multiple days because I just couldn't get to it for whatever reason, I felt like I failed. And maybe that's the same for you. Maybe like there is some guilt that comes from not doing the thing that you were going to do, or the not being as productive as you thought you would be. So for me, that structure is all about having that. So I have my focus and my priorities for the week written out in a way of like, hey, here's the main things. If I don't do anything else, this will still be a productive week. Here's some extra things that like if I do find that I have more energy, I can get to. But and also an amount of adaptability of like in like a project management system, I can just drag like in my Asana, and like I said, we'll talk more about this in the live stream. I can just drag a task from one day to the next, you know, and same thing with Sunsama. I can just do that. And it's like it was never on Monday to begin with. You know, it's always been on Tuesday, you know, this may be just a dumb thing that tricks my brain, but it's a way to grab it and go, you know. So like I love paper for the ideation and the brainstorming and the planning, but when it came to actually doing the thing, I had to move over to digital for that reason, to have that adaptability, to have that repeatable process, to make sure that everything was uniform across my tools, across Google Drive and Asana and, you know, Canva and everything. So that was really something that helped me to really start to make momentum, was creating the structure that worked best for me. So I want to start doing live streams every week because, finally thing, it is important to show up online, you know, in whatever way you can. Don't feel like you have to right this moment. Like I said, if you are in a season of pause, honor that pause for yourself. But if you're looking to get started again, and maybe you don't have the time to write long articles or record and edit podcasts or YouTube videos. By the way, I rarely edit any of these videos. You don't have to necessarily do that, at least at first when you're getting started. It's not a requirement. It's nice to have, it's not a need to have. But live streaming is one of the things I recommend to so many of my clients who are in that, like getting their feet wet in content creation, because you basically can have the equivalent of a sticky note of a like summary of some of the talking points you want to have, or like some questions that you often get from clients. Like write that down somewhere, and you can just show up live. You do not need any fancy graphics. You don't need, like I said, you don't need a script. It's a live stream, so you're not expected to edit. In fact, you literally cannot edit that live stream once it's gone out. So that's just a really low stakes way to start being more present. You can do it on Instagram, you can do it on LinkedIn, you can do it on YouTube. There's so many different places. Twitch is literally all about live streaming. There's so many places you can go ahead and do that. And so I if you're kind of in that stage where like I've been, or you know, you're like, oh, I cannot commit to a podcast or a YouTube channel. That's okay. That is completely valid. You know, like I said, I was doing fine without some of those things. But just what's the lowest stakes way that you can show up? What is the most simplified way that strips all the other unnecessary steps, or just just how can you get your message across to people? How can you answer people's questions about the topic or the industry or the background that you have? And just tell your story just directly to the camera. It doesn't have to be fancy. So, all right, I will see you guys in the next videos, and like I hope to see you on the Friday live stream. Have a great day.